Well, good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Church360 Ledger Financial Reports. This training webinar will be about 30 minutes or so, and we'll be going through all the different kind of financial reports that you can generate and view in Church360 Ledger. My name is Peter Frank. I'm a senior manager for Concordia Technology Solutions. I've been with our group for a little over 5 years now. It's hard to believe how quickly it's gone by. So you've probably seen me on webinars before if you've attended any of them. I haven't done as many Church360 Ledger as I've done some of our other ones, but I have been with Church360 Ledger since the beginning. We released it several years ago. One of my first tasks in joining Concordia Technology Solutions was at the to help plan and implement Church360 Ledger. So while I wouldn't say I'm an expert, at least not on finances, I do know Ledger very well. So my contact information is on the screen. You can reach out to me at any time. Email is probably the best way to get a hold of me, although my phone numbers are listed there too. I'm just not in my office as much as I would like to. So you can also call the 800 number there to get you to our software consultants team. And I believe we have our support number listed at the end of this webinar too. So a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. First off, we'll be presenting for about 25 minutes or so. I've got enough material here probably to go longer if we need to, but that's not my plan. So I'll go through for about 25 minutes. We'll save hopefully 5 minutes for questions at the end. If you have any questions as we go ahead and ask them throughout. That doesn't mean that I'll get to them as I'm presenting. If I'll check over and I'll see them coming up, and if they're relevant to what's going on at that part of the presentation, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'll have a cue ready to go for the 5 minutes at the end. So please just ask them as you're thinking about them. That way you can kind of get them off your mind and make sure that they're going to be answered. The recording of this webinar will be shared. If you are watching it after the fact, welcome. I thank you for tuning in, even though you couldn't be here live. You'll still get all the great information that we're going to cover. So here's our outline for today. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to go through reconciliation and show how you can print out that reconciliation report at the end. That's one of our more common questions. Then we'll get into our kind of standard reporting view. We'll go through the transaction view, look at the general ledger, income and expense, chart of accounts, balance sheet, and also the event log. And I'll show you how to export those to Excel or print them off. I think, well, we'll get into that in just a second. Let me get to my slide, and then we can, that says let's get started. I'll switch over to our Church360 application. Make sure that's showing up. There we go. Now, I realized as I was preparing for this that the database I've been using has been more for 2016, so you'll see those notes up there. The functionality is all still the same, but if you happen to notice that the year's not 2017, that's why. So it's a demo database. There's no real information that we're going to be sharing that way to keep everything confidential. If you're new to Ledger, this screen may be a little bit unfamiliar. If you've been using it for a while, I'm sure you see it. Oops. Go. I've been logged in for a little while. That's part of our security, is that it'll log you out after a certain amount of time of inactivity. But this screen here is our primary screen. You can see up at the top there's the assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. Down below are your line items. And I think it's important to point out right at the beginning as we talk about reports in Church360 Ledger. Reports are different than what you might expect from a PC-based software. This is a web-based software. We have designed this so that you can give people the access they need to get to the information they need and no more. So that if you want to have your ministry leaders be able to see their transactions, see where they're at according to budget, you can set that up. You can give them access to log in and see it. It's meant to be kind of a collaborative environment, not necessarily from a workflow standpoint, although you can. I know that in most congregations, you don't want your ministry leaders entering transactions, and that makes perfect sense. But rather than always generating printed reports and sharing them at a council meeting, that's time and energy on the treasurer or the financial administrator's part, you can give the people who need access to the information access to go in and view it, and so they can kind of dig around and see what they need. And so that's what is a kind of a different take on reporting within Church360 Ledger. The other thing is that a lot of the information that you'll need is right there within the interface, and so as you give people access to that, they can go in and really dig deeper. And I'll show you here as we get to talking about reconciliation, that as you dig in, you can kind of see the breadcrumbs of where you're going. So you've got home, and then we're at assets. We're going to go into central trust. This is our bank account. We're going to get into the checking account. And so checking is a category, and we'll go to central trust. So you can see these breadcrumbs digging in, and each one is giving you a different view of information that you need. And so now we're at the central trust checking account, which is at the top level. This is what your bank statement would show, and so you can see all the transactions down below. But then you see here unrestricted building fund, mission fund. This is where you bring in your restricted funds in order to apply the designated gifts for specific purposes, and we don't have anything applied right there. Before I go too far, actually, I'm going to go here and open up our chart of accounts into a new view, because I don't want to lose this here. We'll get there in just a second. Let me switch our date range as well. I'm going to, oops, not 2017, all of 2016 is what I want to see. Okay. Yeah, every time I do a webinar, my internet goes a little bit slow. There's my chart of accounts. You can see here that these are categories. This is kind of the path that we went through: assets, central trust, checking. Any that have these squares here is just a category or a higher level. And then down below here, when we get into this, we've applied account number there, and that's how we've kind of split that up. So you can see we've got our chart of accounts listed here. That's what you kind of navigate through. So a view like this, your transactions view, as you get down to a level, you can export this view to Excel. You can print this out. If you want to print it and then share it, distribute it over paper. And that's common throughout all of this, is that you can do this and distribute it, or you can just view it on the screen. So it prints right from your browser. There we go. And you can mess with the settings. We're not going to get into that today. But only for accounts, asset accounts that would be tied to a bank account, where you would get a statement from a third party. Your income and expenses, those are how you associate the transactions, how you're kind of allocating them. There's no third party that's going to give that to you. You can go in here for these assets and click reconcile. And this takes you into a very different mode, and we want to make sure that it's clear that you're in reconciliation mode. And that's why we put that green background in that. We jokingly called it the Hulk mode here, because it's so clear what you're doing that you're doing something different. And the way you would reconcile is you'd put in your beginning balance and your ending balance as found on your bank statement. And so let's start down here. We'll say just all of this April 2016. So we'll put in $262,122.65. Whoops. And then for our ending balance, we're going to do this one right at the top here. And so it says, okay, on our bank statement, this is what it started at, this is what it ended at, so this is the difference here. And now statement difference, you can see that. Now we'll select the transactions by applying the bank statement to these transactions here. And so as you click them, you can see it starts to track the difference. And when you get to the point that you are at a zero difference, that is your total transactions. So you're just applying, you're looking at your bank statement in one hand, clicking off the transactions here. It's a reconciliation process that I'm sure you're very familiar with, but showing how Ledger does it, this will let you know when you've hit that point. So off by $0, which means we've got everything in place. And you can see here, if you hover over it, you get the checks and the debits if you want to split it up. But we'll go ahead and save that. And now that we have reconciled this, as the line items have been reconciled, we can go in here and go to April, because that's what we're looking at. we've got this reconciled lockbox here on this security label, saying that that's already been done. We can't alter this transaction at all. So, so that gives us our, that completes the process of reconciliation. But as we're talking about reports, you may want to print that off. Well, the way you do that, you could either have printed it off on the screen before you saved it, which is probably not the most common way. What you can do is you can go here to the event log, and we'll switch the time frame to 2017 since we did reconcile in 2017. And you can see here today, 9/21 at 9:10 a.m., I reconciled 20 line items. And I just click that message, and I can print this out again. So I like to start off with that because it's one of our more common questions, but it also is a nice tie-in between doing the action that you would normally do within your processes and how it ties to the reporting. If you want to go back and print it, you can go to that event log. Now let's go back to the event log in a little bit more detail here. This event log shows many different things that go on in the application. So you can see it, everything has a timestamp and a user here. You can filter down by users if you have multiple people in there. You've got the different types of things here, actions. But the real important part is over here on the right. You've got creating either like here, creating a new transaction or new account. There's another reconciliation there. It links to these things that you might want to look at again. So like here's a new transaction. This one is showing a journal entry. We'd already closed that fiscal year, so it's grayed out. You can't change anything else, but you can see what's going on in that transaction. So the event log is one of your reporting tools that you have available. But you'll see I went over up here to this third icon, this kind of notebook-looking icon. This is my reports view, and event log's at the bottom there. The four accounts up, or four line items above that, general ledger, income and expense, chart of accounts, and balance sheet, those are your core financial statements that you'll probably use on a very regular basis. So let's start up at the beginning under general ledger. And sometimes this can take a little bit of time to load. This time it loaded really quickly. Maybe the first load of your session takes some time, and I've been playing around with this as I've been waiting to get started. But you can see the general ledger view gives you a very similar view to what you had on that home page, where it gives you all of your different line items. The benefit of this report view, though, here is that you can filter and you can group things on this. So let's say you wanted to go in here and get a check register. There we go, check right there. And you can now see only the line items related to checks. And maybe you want to get down even lower and just show central trust checking. You can filter down by that as well. Now, I'll clear that out. You can do payees as well. There's our different payees listed there. We've got our people and our companies that we're paying for the operating expenses. Whoops. I can then go here to this chain here and do group by payee. And as I do that, that changes that whole view to show everything grouped together. And so if I want to print out this view, I can do that. And it'll go into my browser and pull everything into a nice, clean, printable sheet. So that's one way to do it. I could also export to Excel, and that comes up down here. It may pop over on one of my other monitors. Let's see where that's going to show up. Here we go. Oop, lost it. All right, there we go. So this report shows up in Excel, and it's formatted. It's not just a CSV. It has your title here, your dates, everything gets applied in there, and then you can print it out from here. So you can adjust the page setup to what works best for you. Yeah, we'll go in here. That way, if you wanted to share the file with somebody who didn't have access to Church360 Ledger, you could do that really easily. But you can also print it here and change your margins. All of these things that that you may want to customize, you can do readily and easily through this report in Excel, and it gives you all the information you need. So, and those conventions are standard throughout Church360 Ledger, in that everywhere you go, you can see up here the time selector, or date selector, a print button, and an export button. And so it makes it really easy to get comfortable with those tools, so you can distribute the information in whichever way works best for your congregation. Okay, so to ungroup, you go back to that icon and click that, and it'll ungroup it. You can do the same thing for account here, where you can group it all by those accounts. And the filtering still works as well. So maybe you don't want to do everything. Maybe you just want to do, your taxes in there, the different tax accounts. You could show it. So you can do any combination of filtering and grouping. Now you can only group by one level, because otherwise it starts to get really complicated and you have more titles or subtitles than anything else. So that is one restriction there. So that's your general ledger, and like I said before, it's very similar to what you see on this transaction level. The difference is you don't see information about the transaction itself. You don't see those running balances, and you can filter and group. Let's go to the next one, income and expense. So your statement of income and expense shows all of your, as you would expect, income and expense accounts. And you can collapse or expand these rows by clicking these little arrows. Probably should have said that before I started clicking on them. But next to those accounts, so you have income, you can expand that. And this just shows all of your accounts that you've set up in your chart of accounts with the different categories and totals above for each of those categories as you get down to subcategories, like here's our funds. Now I know it looks like in this one I had done some goofiness with creating and deleting accounts, so I have the duplication there. So that's one of those things with test data that as you're working with it, you get some erroneous information. But as I'm hoping you're following along as we go with your account, you can see that it's just set up exactly as your chart of accounts would be. So here you've first got your budget column and then your actuals, and then it says what percentage of your budget have you used and how many remaining dollars have you do you have. And in the case here, as an overall level, let's see, income less expense. Looks like that's wondering why am I? Oh, it's not that it's totally subtracting. So let me collapse income. There we go. I was looking at it wrong. So we had budgeted that we would have 273,000 come in, and our expense would be 227,000, and then that would give us a surplus of 46,000. And again, we haven't really completed this year, but we've had 71,000 come in, 8,000 go out, and so we're actually well ahead of budget in terms of our surplus. So the remaining column, this may confuse people. For totals, it's just doing a mathematical calculation of subtracting from budget the actual from budget, and that's why you see a negative number there. But it's actually a positive thing, and that you're ahead of the game. So that's why the column is titled remaining. So because it's just that transaction or that calculation of subtracting the actual from budget. So the important thing here to remember is the ability to expand or collapse your accounts, and then of course you can go here to print, and it'll remember whatever settings that you had on the previous view. So if you want to expand everything, it'll have that, and we'll give it a second to fill out the numbers. There we go. And there's our, oops, it's still coming up. There's our print view. So that's income and expense, and each of these other ones are very similar to that. It's just the type of information that shows is different. So our chart of accounts, get over to that. Has that same thing where you've got the ability to collapse and expand. The difference with this is that it's giving you a starting balance and ending balance based on the time frame, and it's giving you a total of your debits and credits and giving you that change from your starting to ending balance, as well as a percentage. And this shows all of your different accounts, assets, liabilities, income, and expense. And this is a nice way to get a quick snapshot of where everything is at in your congregation and what changes have occurred. And so you can use this time frame here to say, okay, let's go to April 2016 only and see what happened from the beginning of the month to the ending of the month. So that's what the chart of accounts report is, and the balance sheet is quite similar to that as well. So you can see here the balance sheet is only going to show you your assets and your liabilities, and so it can show you your net worth, your net total there, your assets less liabilities at the end. But it gives you that same starting balance and ending balance, as well as your totals of debits and credits and that change and that percentage as well. All right, so those are the standard reports that are available. A couple other things that I want to highlight here before we get into our question and answers. Let me go back to our main view. We talked before about going into the event log and pulling out different transactions that have occurred or different actions. On your transaction view, when you click on a line item, you'll see here it'll highlight the related transactions into a different color and highlight even more depending on what line you're on. But when you click on it, you get this view here, which is editing the transaction. Now, if you attended our editing transaction session, you know that when you're editing a transaction, you're not actually editing the base transaction, you're applying a journal entry over it. And what Church360 Ledger does is that it will go in and make those changes as a journal entry and tie those two transactions together. Now, we've already reconciled that. Let's go ahead and do a new transaction real quick. We'll just do a transfer. Transfer of unrestricted to restricted. And we'll do unrestricted, we'll do $500, and then we'll transfer that to the building fund and save that. And we'll switch our view so that it's 2017. There's our transaction there. And so I may want to change that here to $400 and save that. So that's as if it was an edit. And so on the transaction view, it shows up here, but as you highlight over it, you get this little arrow down here. In fact, I think the placement, yeah, the placement does go over a little bit just because it's additional. As you click down, you can see what was actually edited. And when we go in here and click on the transaction again, you can see the amendments in place. And we should have put a note on here to change it to that, that we change it from 500 to 400. So if I go back on here, let's go ahead and change it to 300. I should have put the amendment now in here, changed from 400 to 300. Save that. Now we're down to 300 here. When I click in here, it's going to show all of those amendments. Now each one of these again is a journal entry. But my point here was that these kind of transactions, you can hit the print button or Control P and print this kind of report, and it'll show that total there with the amendment on there. And let me go back here to our event view. Sorry, event log. And you can see here are those changes, created a new transaction, which was a revision of this old transaction. And so you can click on this and it'll take you back and show you those transactions as well. So that's really where the event log comes in handy, is that you can see all these actions that occurred and report on them. And here you can see the exact time and date, the type of transaction here, which again, it's creating a new transaction, a revision of this transaction, which are all of those changes, and exactly who did it. And so if you're wanting to report on this, you can quickly find that here in the event log. All right, so we're running out of time. Let me switch back to my PowerPoint here. Because we're talking about training, to stay up to date on Church360 Ledger, and we don't make a lot of significant changes. One of the core things on Ledger is that we keep it a stable and easy to use product. Many of our competitors are meant for big businesses that have a lot of different requirements. Churches are a little bit more straightforward. They have their own unique circumstances, but it's not the same as being in the business world. And so that's why we created Church360 Ledger. But to stay up to date on any changes that we make, I encourage you to follow our blog, Church360, or 360ledger.com/blog. And for more information, we also have a training manual available. Now, most of the information in the training manual is available in our help system, which we can switch back over here. You've probably already seen this in previous trainings, this I button in the lower right corner. When you click on that, it opens up the information center, and you can search for different help articles and view them right in here. Or you can send us a message and ask a question. But for some people, it's easier to have a printed document that shows all of that. And so we've made that available for a fee of $25 plus shipping. You can go in and learn more about that and order it at 360ledger.com/training. But here is my contact information again, as well as our software support team. And you can reach out to us at any time. Generally, our support team will handle questions, specific questions related to, how do I do this, how do I do that. They're better at answering that in more details than I am, but you can certainly email me and I can help you as well and get you the answer. It may be sending your request onto the support team so that they can respond, but feel free to reach out to me or call me at any time. So this time we'll take any questions that you might have, and I'll try to provide the answers, but I see nothing in the queue right now. We'll give it just another minute or so to see if anybody has anything that they'd like to ask. But if not, I do thank you for being here today and learning more about Church360 Ledger. It's my pleasure to show off this great tool that helps churches manage their finances, provide a little bit more accountability, and give you the information you need right when you need it. So, seeing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today. Thank you again for joining me. Have a great day.